name is Shirt, and I'm going to talk about rendering. So again, similar to the other classes in this course, intro and philosophy first, briefly, schematic overview, and settling at advice at the end. So the intro and philosophy to for rendering. Now the rendering, the quality of the rendering capabilities, and also the performance for us has always been hugely important. It's pretty much what we've strived for since day one. We want the best visuals at the best performance. That's always been the thing, period. That's it. And we want to have one central and all compatible set of tools and features regardless of renderer, target platform, as much as possible. That's it. So all the tools should be part of the engine, all the features should be part of it, and as much as possible we want them to work on all the different devices or platforms or whatever you're working with. So again, Unreal Engine 1 was actually the first engine to blend colored lights correctly. So you could imagine how long back we are to, that was a feature, but back then that was a really big feature. It could blend colored lights correctly and display the correct color that should be, coming out of the mix of those two colors. It actually had dynamic lighting and static lighting and would blend the two together. It had volumetric lighting, even had lens flares, it had perfect mirrors, had insanely crazy perfect mirrors, it was awesome to see. It had procedural texture effects. I mean, if you look at what Unreal Engine 1 had more than 20 years ago, it's crazy. It, at some point, this was a few years after the initial release, but it had HD textures, 1K to 2K in resolution with detailed textures on top of it, and we're talking about computers back then that had, 256 megabytes of memory or something? It's insane. So that sets the base, and we carried on from that. So Unreal Engine 2, then it went to DirectX 7, mesh support was added, terrains, large outdoor environments, there were vehicles coming in, foliage and particles came in, weren't there before yet. There were the first materials that came in, but most of the lighting was still, or rather still, was vertex lighting based for the models. But it was a big step up, and again, you see, the shape that Unreal Engine 4 is today, you see all of that shaping up. By UA3, we were essentially getting very close to the idea of UA4, at least in terms of features and tools and things in there. It was now DirectX 9, we had actual complex materials very close to what we still have today. It was still forward rendered though, even though, well, at the moment we can do forward rendering, but we are deferred rendering primarily, and also for background on that, this entire presentation, this entire class is going to be about the deferred renderer of Unreal, so we're not going to touch on the forward one. Larger outer environments, light mapping for everything, etc. Okay. But so what UA4 wants to do, what the idea was, that it should be able to handle any style. So go for, because we've always been known to doing, like high-end realistic rendering or something like Gears of War, maybe if you want to put it like that. But we want any style should be possible to do with the engine. And for example, Fortnite really shows that as well. It should work for anyone, from one single person to a very large team of 300 people or so. It should work for everyone across the board with the same engine, the same tools, and the best possible graphics, best possible performance. Fortnite is a very nice test case for that. It's an immense scale, huge player base, lots of different devices. Whatever we do with rendering, we always try to make sure we test that on, it gets implemented in Fortnite as a test case, and in Fortnite, because it runs on, for example, mobile, that means that feature needs to run on mobile, and so forth. So, for example, the sky system that we've added, sky and atmosphere we added recently, it's going to run on mobile. Okay. And equally so, as UA4 expands further into other industries, they too have, they require an even higher visual fidelity. So we're further improving the architecture, gets even more robust, the pipelines, more flexibility, and so all of that has been going on the last couple of years. And what you're going to see is where we're currently at. Okay. So again, as mentioned, we are supporting both forward and deferred. We're going to focus on deferred because it's the most commonly used one. Now, just to sketch the general layout of what we're going to look at in the schematic, there's a few small things we got to say what happens ahead of rendering, but then there is visibility, so occlusion essentially. Then the rendering starts. There is the base pass, which includes the geometry, draw calls, pre-computed lighting comes in as part of the base pass materials. It will be rendered to a G buffer as it is a deferred renderer. It will then have dynamic light and shadows. We need to talk about that. There's a lot of different features there. The reflections, how they work, various additional things, atmospherics and translucency is what we want to touch on. But in reality, there's lots of stuff that's missing from this, but I think this is kind of the most important part of it. And we end up with post-processing, end up with a final frame, and some words about scalability and performance. So there's where we're going to go.